All right. It's a pleasure to introduce our featured speaker tonight. He is one of the top venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. Actually, he's one of the top venture capitalists in the history of Silicon Valley, which would mean that he's one of the top venture capitalists in the history of the world. So let's, 1, 2, 3, a big wow for Bill Reichart. 1, 2, 3, wow! Let's give it up for Bill.
Is this your way of saying I'm old? Is that what? Okay. So now I'm assuming I need to use the mic because you're going to make me use the mic, right? Okay. All right. So I'll use the mic. All right. Great. Well, thank you so much, Rob and Idea to IPO, for all of your long-standing great work in the history of Silicon Valley. Really appreciate that. And thank you all for showing up this evening. And so what Rob was implying in his introduction is I've been around a long time. And so I've listened to lots of pitches. I've done lots of pitches. In fact, when I started in Silicon Valley as an entrepreneur, long ago and far away. When I was a graduate student at Stanford, I wound up starting a software company. And that before it was fashionable for grad students at Stanford to start software companies. And that was wildly successful until it crashed and burned. But that was okay because, you know, the great thing about Silicon Valley is when you crash and burn, you just pick yourself up and you dust yourself off, and then you spin the story a little bit, and then you do it again. So, and I did it again, and we took that company public, and so that was great. I thought I knew everything. And then I plowed that money into another startup, which was the most amazing technology I had ever seen in my life. And we ran that company into a brick wall at about 500 miles an hour. So I got a little bit of humility. I did it again. We took that company public, and I said, let's try something different now. And so I got together with Guy Kawasaki and a few other people. We started Garage. And the big idea behind Garage was to take all of the stuff we had learned as entrepreneurs in the business world and share it with entrepreneurs who were starting up new companies. So one of our mantras was, we start up startups. Another one of our mantras was, we take the FU out of funding. We didn't put that on the website, though. But in any case, the point was, we wanted to help entrepreneurs be more successful faster. So we've spent a lot of time over the years trying to share thoughts with entrepreneurs. And one of the themes throughout these years has been, how can we help entrepreneurs be more effective at pitching? And this was very self-interested, of course, because frequently we found it was very painful listening to entrepreneurs pitch. So we thought, God, if we can only make the pitches better, it will be less painful for us investors. So it was, purely selfish in intent. And one of the things over the years that I've realized is that we spend a ton of time in Silicon Valley and all over the planet teaching entrepreneurs how to do elevator pitches, right? So you've all been taught how to do an elevator pitch. And it's, 90 seconds or 2 minutes or, 60, whatever, which you're supposed to condense everything about your business into just 60 seconds so that you can, try to get some investor to write you a check. But if you think about the reality of the planet, what you realize is, where can you use an elevator pitch? Where can you use an elevator pitch? Okay. When was the last time you rode an elevator in Silicon Valley? Right? Now, the dirty little secret, the whole reason we invented this idea of elevator pitches was just to force you to talk less. That was the whole reason. So that the pain would be over sooner. The only place you can do an elevator pitch is at an elevator pitch competition. That's really the only place you can do an elevator pitch. In the real world, if you could really get your clicker to work, in the real world, there we go. In the real world, you've got 20 seconds. This is too bad. You've got 20 seconds to be compelling, or you got to go home. You got 20 seconds in the real world to connect with someone, to get them to pay attention to you, to get them to keep reading your email, to get them to keep listening to you at a cocktail party. You only got 20 seconds. You do not have 60 seconds. You certainly don't have 2 minutes. So in the real world, you've got to figure out how to get them excited in just 20 seconds. And what you want to do is you want to get them to say, wow, that's amazing. Tell me more. So how do you get them to say, wow, that's amazing? First of all, you invent a clicker that works. That would be really, really cool. But, okay. So the secret, I'm wondering if this machine is overloaded, and that's what's going on. But we'll see. So the secret to figuring out how to get people to say wow is actually Human Anatomy 101. What we've learned in human communications is that good communicators connect with 3 body parts. What are the 3 body parts you have to connect with? Well, the first, of course, is the head. So, and this is where we spend almost all of our attention. What we spend coaching entrepreneurs is you've got to figure out how to create a logical argument that will use evidence and data to prove the point that you're going to generate a huge internal rate of return. That's kind of the framework that, for the most part, we teach entrepreneurs to do. This is how I was trained when I was an entrepreneur. I thought a pitch was all about creating this logical argument supported with all this data and evidence. 56 slides later, I could say, QED, you have to invest in my company. So, I was lucky it kind of worked most of the time. I was lucky enough to get into the partner's room. But still, my reality was only 10% of the time did it work. So I must have done 250 pitches as an entrepreneur, and 90% of the time I struck out. But that's partly because the way I was taught was to focus on the brain. It turns out that's not how investors make decisions. So this was an epiphany I had when I became a VC. So after I was an entrepreneur, we started Garage, and we were funded by Sequoia and Mayfield and Draper Fisher and Silicon Valley Bank, funded Garage to be the farm team for Sand Hill Road. That was how we got started. And so I crossed over from being an entrepreneur to being a VC. And now I'm thinking, wow, I'm one of the VCs. I thought these VCs were these incredible analytic brains that could listen to all these pitches, could process all this data, had an algorithm in their head that could calculate an internal rate of return and boom, make these brilliant investment decisions, right? That's why they're paid the big bucks. So I go to my new VC buddies and I say, hey, now I'm one of you guys. Tell me, what's the algorithm, right? And they would look at me and they go, well, we invest in teams. Yeah, that's what we Okay, all right, but what are the analytics? What are the measures? What are the psychodemographics you look for in a great entrepreneur? They go, well, it's kind of pattern recognition. After about 5 or 10 years, you'll get the hang of it. Are you kidding me? You gave us all this money to go find great startups, and you got nothing? You got nothing to help us figure out how to invest in these companies? And so I started watching how all of my peers were investing in companies. I tried to figure out what's the relationship between the companies that were getting money and the companies that weren't getting money. And I watched how we were doing it. When we started, we tried to be incredibly quantitative. We created a spreadsheet and a ranking system and a scorecard, and we tried to quantify the factors that we thought made for successful entrepreneurs. And what we quickly realized is each of us was gaming the system. We liked a team, we gave them a 10. We didn't like them, we gave them a 5. What? How useful is that? So I tried to figure out what is the difference between companies that get funding and companies that don't get funding. And I had this revelation. So here's the dirty little secret about venture capital that nobody has told you. VCs do not invest with their heads. The secret is you have got to figure out how to appeal to their hearts. The secret is VCs invest in companies they fall in love with. Now, this shouldn't actually be a surprise because, as we know, humans are not rational, right? We know that we as humans, we do things we want to do. We don't do things we should do, right? Otherwise, we'd all be in shape, we'd get plenty of sleep, and et cetera, right? But we're not rational. VCs are humans, believe it or not, right? So normally at this point, somebody raises their hand and says, wait a second, Bill, I didn't think VCs had a heart. Ba-dum-bum. Okay. But the reality is, the way it works, the secret to getting the attention of a VC is you've got to figure out what is going to make them fall in love with you. What is going to make their heart beat faster? What's going to get their pulse racing? What's going to get them to say, wow, this is amazing? Wow is an emotional reaction. It's not an intellectual reaction. You've got to get an emotional reaction. That will get them to go back to their office and tell their partners, we got to bring these guys in. We got to talk to this company. We got to look at this deal. They're not going to do it through intellectual analysis. So you've got to get them to fall in love. So why do VCs fall in love? Well, sometimes they fall in love with the team. Sometimes, the team comes in and they're really smart and they're really articulate. They work well together and, we go, whoa, these people are amazing. I love it. They're going to really pull it off. So sometimes that's it. It is team. Sometimes it's technology. So, we had this guy come into our office. He could barely speak English, out of the university, PhD. He's got an entirely different model for CRISPR technology, using the Cas3 protein instead of the Cas9 protein. And we're going, oh my God, this is earth-shattering. So sometimes we fall in love with technology. Sometimes we fall in love with science. We know it's not a good idea to fall in love with technology, but frequently that is a driver. And then sometimes we fall in love with a vision to change the world. So we had a company come into our office, 4 graduate students from Stanford, who had this idea that they could build a solar rechargeable lantern that would replace kerosene for the 2 billion people on Earth who depend on kerosene for their lighting. And their rechargeable lantern was cheaper than kerosene. And we go, my God, that's just great. But, it feels like one of those social, philanthropic, do-good kind of things. And they come over the table at us and they say, you don't get it. If we're going to change the lives of 2 billion people, we have to build a big, profitable, sustainable, global, multinational corporation. And we go, yeah, we love these guys. So that is a company called Delight Design. And they are the global leaders in solar rechargeable lighting. We sold them off at a very nice return about a year ago. So one of our favorite companies. But the point is, VCs fall in love for different reasons. The point is, you got to get them to fall in love. Why are you lovable? What do you have that is going to make them say, wow? So that's the most important part of tonight's discussion. Figure out what you've got that will make a VC fall in love, that will make them say, wow. Don't just depend on the head, figure out how to get to their heart, okay? But there's a third body part you got to appeal to. What's the third body part? The third body part is the gut. So the reality in this world is that as humans, whenever someone comes up to you, you immediately have a reaction to that person. You trust them, you don't trust them. You like them, you don't like them. You think they're honest, you think they're dishonest. You want to spend more time with them, you don't want to spend more time with them. So that's your gut reaction. Everybody has this instantaneous gut reaction to other people. That's just, unfortunately, that's the way the world works. So you've got to make sure you pass the gut check. And unfortunately, a lot of entrepreneurs blow it by being either untrustworthy or not credible, by being hyperbolic, by saying things that don't sound credible. So you got to be careful when you approach an investor that you are credible, that you are trustworthy, that they believe what you're telling them. if you start saying things that are not believable, even if they're true, your application may be 100 times faster than Oracle. But nobody's going to believe that. So you got to figure out how to say something that is both extraordinary and credible. So it's 100 times faster, and we proved it last summer with Major League Baseball in a test of our analytics engine. Whatever, right? So you got to pass this third test. You got to pass the gut check. So 3 body parts: head, heart, and gut. Which do you think is the most important? Just want to see if you're listening. It's the heart. It is the heart, okay? So you have to pass the gut check. You got to pass the gut check. And what you say, it's got to make sense to the head, right? You've got to say something logical, intelligible, that people can understand and people will remember, because that's what they're going to take back to their partners. But at the end of the day, they're not going to go back to their partners unless they fall in love. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight, how to get there. So let me tell you how not to get there. How not to get there, this is typically what we get in an elevator pitch. So typically, a company comes into our office and they lead with something like this. The name has been changed to protect the guilty. But they say, Gulco is a dynamic startup company that has developed a revolutionary technology that is going to disrupt our $56 billion industry. Our team has over 45 years of combined experience, and we have 3 patents pending. We project that our curve-jumping, paradigm-shifting solution is going to transform the blah, 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 right? This is typically what we get. Lots of passion, lots of enthusiasm, lots of words. But there's no substance there, right? So the other side, there are teams that come into our office, they got a ton of substance. So this team, they actually came into our office and they actually said, we use a 2048 Diffie-Hellman key exchange and 256-bit triple DES to provide impenetrable encryption for your IoT devices. Yeah. So now, typically there are a whole bunch of people in the audience who actually understand that, right? So I get that, but believe it or not, I did not. I did not quite understand that, and so it's very common, particularly here in the Valley, that these engineering, science-driven startups are so proud of their technology. They focus on the technology. You don't want to focus on the technology. You want to focus on the value proposition. So the value proposition here is, we make IoT devices safe and protected from hacking. So that's, we kind of got that from that, but it was not a great way to tell that story. So the reaction that you generally have when after an entrepreneur pitches to you as an investor is, and at the end of that, you wind up looking like this. This is not where you want to be. You may not even know that you're like this. You're looking at the sky and thinking, wow, it's a nice day. But this is not where you want to be. So what you want to do is you want to figure out how to get to wow. And so what I'm going to talk about is how to get there. So again, I'm going to start with how not to get there. How not to get there is to follow a lot of the common wisdom you're going to hear from pitch coaches. So now some of my best friends are pitch coaches. But there's a lot of pitch coaching that does not apply in a lot of situations. And it particularly does not apply when you've got to get your point across in the first 20 seconds. So one of the things that pitch coaches tell all entrepreneurs is you start with the problem, right? You start with the problem. That makes sense. Because, problem, solution, logical following, right? So almost every pitch template on the planet says start with the problem. That's insane. If you have a compelling value proposition and it's clear what your solution is, it'll be obvious the problem you're solving. So I'm telling you guys, even if you have an hour to tell the story, don't start with the problem. Start with your solution. and the compelling value proposition you're delivering. So you think about the benefits that your product offers. The benefits really are the elements of the problem you're solving. So if you start with the problem, you're going to be redundant. You're going to say, e-commerce is plagued with abandoned shopping carts. 3 slides later, we have a technology that increases lift and prevents people from abandoning shopping carts. All you have to do is say, we reduce shopping cart abandonment by a factor of 3. Wow, okay. That's all you have to say. You don't have to tell me that e-commerce shoppers abandon shopping carts. You don't have to tell me that there's pollution in the air. You don't have to tell me that people die of cancer. If you just tell me we cure cancer, I get it. I don't need any information about the problem. If you tell me we eliminate pollution, I don't need any more information about the problem. Okay, so don't start with the problem. Promise? Okay. All right. So the next thing that pitch coaches tell everyone is, the way to make your pitch really work is if you tell a story, right? Because we know, it's true, studies show that humans remember stories better than they're going to remember just a sequence of facts or a litany of evidence, right? So you tell a story, people remember it, more likely to remember it. The problem is we get the entrepreneurs walking into our office and they've been told they got to tell a story. So they put up their title slide and they've got some name for some company that was the URL that they were able to get but is otherwise unintelligible, right? None of you have that, right? Okay. And they say, before we tell you about Zizici, let me tell a story. When I was a child, my grandfather had a farm. And on the farm there was a pond, and in the afternoons, I'd like to go down to the pond and look across to the woods across the pond, and I'd look at the trees and blah, 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 whatever, right? So you don't want to be telling that story, okay? So I will give you permission to tell a story if you can tell the story in 1 sentence, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, so there is a role for storytelling, but not in the first 20 seconds. So then, the other thing that drives investors insane, and again, nobody seems to be telling entrepreneurs this. This is like this inside, insanity in the venture industry. What drives investors insane is that every single entrepreneur on the planet has been told, you've got to show a TAM that is billions of dollars. You got to show a big market because, all those VCs, they want unicorns, right? And so you've got to put a slide in there that says market size, $56 billion. So that, even if you stumble and you only get 1% of the market, it's a great outcome, right? $560 million. So every VC knows that your market size slide is a lie. So make sure you do not destroy your credibility by claiming that you're going after a $56 billion market. Because if you're really being innovative, if you're really going to disrupt, if you're really going to change the world, if you're really going to do something interesting, probably right now you have a $0 billion market, right? Now, that doesn't mean there isn't a huge upside market potential, but don't go Google, social networks or healthcare or auto parts or, fashion and say, because Google says the fashion industry is a $960 billion market, that you're going after a $960 billion market. You're not, okay? And if you do that, it just destroys your credibility. So instead, tell us, bottom up, customer by customer, who are the people you're going after? What are their characteristics? Where are they? How are you going to get to them? How are you going to convert them? How much are they going to pay you? And then how big can your company be after a few years? That's what we want to see that you understand. Not that you can Google global fashion industry, right? We get that you could Google that. So do not create do not destroy your credibility by talking about this illusory big market TAM that you think you have. And then the last thing is, you probably all have a bunch of templates you've seen online and blogs and articles and books and whatever. So there are all sorts of templates out there. And again, we have a template on the Garage website, so I'm not. But no template was designed for your company. Your company has a sequence of value propositions and challenges and issues that you're going to have to deal with to build a successful company that is unique to your company. Do not take the Airbnb slide deck template and then apply it to your power electronics hardware company, right? It's not going to be the right sequence of slides. It's not going to be the right topic. Do not take the Airbnb template and apply it to your medical device company. Again, not the right template. So templates are useful in terms of at least giving you kind of a checklist of things you should be paying attention to. Make sure you cover the important issues for your company, but put it in the order that makes the most sense for your listeners. So what are the obvious questions that a good investor is going to ask you in what sequence? Now, every investor is different, so the sequence will be different, but you need to figure out, based upon your experience with investors, what's the best way to sequence the information that you're putting in your deck. Do not use a standard template to build your deck, okay? So what I'm saying is, if you follow this common wisdom that's out there, you will not get to wow. How do you get to wow? The secret to getting to wow is to find another laptop to use when doing your slide deck. Okay, the secret to getting to wow is 3 C's. The secret is you got to be clear, you got to be compelling, and you got to be credible. So the first thing, you're not going to get anywhere unless we understand what you're doing, unless we understand your business. You have to be clear about what it is you do. Second, then, you've got to articulate a value proposition. What benefit do you offer to customers that is compelling? That's the wow part. And then third, how can we believe you? What makes you credible? Because we've heard it all. Investors have heard it all before. So you've got to say something that makes us believe that you are different and that you have customers that really want what you have. Be clear, be compelling, and be credible. Okay? And I'm telling you, this applies to every communication you have for your business from now on. Every communication, press release, website, speech, pitch deck, whatever, every communication of your company should be tested against these 3 measures. Is it clear? Is it compelling? Is it credible? Okay? What are the 3 C's? Thank you. Okay. So, that's the other most important thing I want you to take away tonight. Okay? Are the 3 C's. All of your communications have to be clear, they have to be compelling, and they have to be credible. You can't avoid any one of them. Clear applies to the head, right? That's the brain part. Compelling gets my heart beating faster. And credible gets you through the gut check, right? Clear, compelling, credible. All right? So now, if you figure this out, what I'm telling you is that this is applicable across your company. So this is not just about elevator pitches. This is not even just about pitches. This is about all of your communications. So when obviously you're pitching to investors, also when you are pitching to customers. Now your pitch to customers is different than your pitch to investors, but the rules are the same: clear, compelling, and credible. When you're at a cocktail party reception, when you're at a trade show, all of these places, you got to figure out how to get to wow, how to be clear, compelling, and credible. So the way you get there is it'll come. I'm going to give you a 3-step process for getting there. Okay. Step number one, right? Okay, so I'm going to give you a formula to help you get to wow in 20 seconds. So first sentence, what is it you do? What is a simple, clear, understandable sentence that explains to your average listener what it is you do? So frame it in terms of what it is you're doing better than anyone else. It can't just be, we're a law firm. You know, we are the most cost-effective patent law firm in Silicon Valley, or something like that. Where'd he go? I don't know. I don't know. But it can't just be, we do real estate. You know, I'm the most, where'd she go? She's gone. Okay, but whatever, right? So it's got to be, oh, there she is. And she did a great job of saying, of presenting yourself as, I am your real estate resource. I'm not just a realtor. Anybody can be a realtor, but I am your real estate resource for Silicon Valley. Something like that. Okay, whatever. So what is it you do? It's stunning to me how many entrepreneurs, when I run into them, wherever I run into them, and I say, well, wait, so what are you up to? They're like, well, you know how I was, well, and then, well, so now what I'm doing is, and I shifted, you saw me then, but now what I don't know. I mean, it's incredible to me that you can't just easily and casually say, we've invented the most advanced power electronics in the industry that saves 50% in the course of AC/DC transformation or something like that. Whatever. I'm going too quickly. But anybody should be able to very easily, comfortably, confidently say what you're up to. Why don't all of you have that? By the end of tonight, I want all of you to have that. I want all of you to have that sentence that you can say comfortably and confidently that would enable anybody to turn to the next person and explain what you do. So if we had more time, that would be the workshop that we would do. So do this with friends. Do this with other people. You know, tell them what you do and then tell them to tell somebody else what you do and see if they got it. Right? Really useful exercise to see if what you're saying is clear, understandable, and memorable. So that's your first sentence. What do you do? So use, now some pitch coaches, they say you got to do it in 8 words, right? You got 8 words, and they force you to do it in 8 words, or 12 words, or whatever it is. Forget about it. Just use good, clear human communication. Some people, you know, your grandmother has to understand it. Your grandmother doesn't have to understand it, okay? You know, now maybe your grandmother's a PhD physicist. That's cool. So that's good. But just, you know, use what I call simple TechCrunch language. So, you know, it should be the language of business in Silicon Valley or in your industry. But do not use jargon. Right? TechCrunch avoids jargon because they're speaking across the technical audience. It's not IEEE spectrum language, right? It's simple TechCrunch language. Okay? So, you know, yesterday I was at a meeting and this guy kept on talking about CP. I said, well, our CP, and this is our CP, and that's our CP. And finally, I just, you know, I was looking around and I was wondering, am I the only idiot in the room who doesn't know what CP is? And it means market share, right? Customer position. I didn't know. But so everybody has their own particular way of using different, you know, acronyms. Yes? No, you can, as you may have noticed, I can't go back a slide. So, sorry, I got a technology problem here. But I know, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? But I'll tell you, you know, I'll send you the slides. Or you can go see the video, because the slides will be on the video. So I'm going to share all these slides, all right? Okay, all right. So, sorry, that's a little crazy, I know. Okay. Second sentence, what is the compelling benefit that you offer? What is the compelling benefit that you offer? Now, what is a benefit? Somebody explain to me a benefit. What's a benefit? Something that's good for you. Okay. Pardon? Okay, give me an example. Okay. Okay. So I want it to be more specific and concrete than just, goodness. All right? So we save you money. We accelerate we can accelerate your applications by 100x, saving you $20,000 a year in your AWS bill or something, right? So a benefit is, in business, a benefit is generally measurable financially. So it's got some economic value. Whether it's increased revenues or decreased costs, which means increased profits, or lower capital expenditures, longer lifetime, longer, mean time between failure, some concrete measurable benefit. Now, that's ideal. Not every successful company has a concrete measurable benefit, like Facebook, right? What's Facebook's concrete measurable benefit? So what made Facebook successful? What was their compelling value proposition? Pardon? Social. Well, it's a social network. That's what it is. But there were lots of social networks out there, right? There were other social networks. Facebook is not the first social network, right? But what Facebook did, among other things, but the thing that really differentiated Facebook is, at the time, Facebook made sure that the person you were talking to was authentically that person. They made sure that 40-year-old guys were not pretending to be teenage girls, right? So, or whatever the problem was out there, right? So Facebook offered trust, and trust has value. And especially if you live in a world absent trust, finding a place with trust, it's great, right? So trust is a benefit. It's hard to create trust as a startup, though, right? So what they did is they made it very, very, very difficult. You have to have a harvard.edu or a columbia.edu or a stanford.edu. That was it. If you didn't have that, you could not get in, period, right? So they just made it really hard, which then created this sort of flip effect of, boy, it's, I really want to get in, right? So it made it exclusive. Being part of an exclusive group is also a benefit, all right? So what is your compelling benefit? Ideally, it's measurable. Ideally, it's quantifiable. And then who realizes the benefit? So almost always it won't be the investor, right? Who is your target audience? What benefit will they realize? How much money will they save? How much money will they make thanks to you? So that's your second sentence, all right? And then your third sentence is establishing your credibility. So here's what happens inside an investor brain whenever you're talking to an investor. So this is a dirty little secret. Nobody told me when I was an entrepreneur, but it's really important to understand, which is, as soon as you open your mouth, the investor says, oh yeah, I've heard this before. Yeah, what was that team that came into our office and what was the name of that company? I heard this, and then we heard it before then. And so the investors are constantly, as soon as you open your mouth, their brain is spinning around all the times they've heard the same thing before. Now, you as entrepreneurs, when I was an entrepreneur, I thought, oh, my idea is so unique and amazing and compelling that nobody on the planet has ever done this before. So I assumed, as soon as I opened my mouth, they would be knocked off their feet and want to rush to their checkbook and deposit money in my bank account, right? But no. They've heard it all before. I've listened to thousands and thousands. It's really, really rare that I ever hear something truly novel. Now, one time, about 2 years ago, I did hear something really novel. Team walks into our office and says, we have an IoT device for pets. And I go, oh no, not another IoT device for pets. And they say, but this is not just another IoT device for pets. We have an IoT device that will tell you if your dog is depressed. I go, whoa, I have never heard that one before. And it was a bad meeting because Because I'm not a dog person, okay? I am not a dog person. And I'm sitting there saying, are you telling me you have a dog and you can't tell if your dog is depressed? Really? So, yeah, because I work all day and the dog's home alone, and the dog's moping around and, I can't tell that the dog is moping around. And so I want to know if the dog is sad of course the dog is sad when you're gone. Are you crazy? So, but in any case, so I thought, okay, there's a novel idea. Got it. 6 months later, another team walks in the office and says, we have a novel IoT device for pets. And we can tell if your dog is sad. So, in any case, you know this? You've heard this pitch? Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. It was not one of you guys, was it? It was not, okay. Sorry. Okay, the point is, you've got to shut that down. So whether or not it is true that they've heard it before, the investor is thinking about all those other companies that sound kind of like what you're doing. So you can't wait until slide 6 of your pitch where it says, slide 6 is where you do the competition part, right? You've got to shut it down now. Otherwise, the investor's not going to listen for the next 5 slides. So you've got to say, now, you may think you have heard of other companies that are monitoring your pet's affect. But how we are unlike anybody else because ... So you better be able to compartmentalize the competition and differentiate yourself right up front. Otherwise, they're going to stop listening. And then you got to give me some evidence that makes me believe that what you're telling is the truth. Do you have a proof point that, in fact, what you've got is different? So you say something like, and we proved it last summer in a proof of concept with Major League Baseball, where we were able, this is the prior example, we were able to demonstrate that we could accelerate data analytics by a factor of 100x. So Major League Baseball, wow, that's impressive. 100x, that's exciting. So now that sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But it's not. You can say those 3 sentences in 20 seconds. So that's what you want to figure out. Can I collapse all of the essence of my company, what we do, what's compelling, and why we're credible into something like 3 sentences in 20 seconds? So that's your goal tonight. So we're going to have a few people come up in a few minutes and try with me. And then as a group, we're going to give these entrepreneurs feedback. I don't know who has been selected and who's in the audience, but I think Rob has that sorted out. So 3 sentences. What do you do? What's the compelling benefit? How are you different? Why do I believe you? Right? So now, usually at this point, one of the entrepreneurs raises their hand and says, wait a second, Bill. I could have sworn you said, don't follow templates. And that kind of looks like a template, right? So, agreed. This is not a template. I don't want you to necessarily follow it religiously, but it's just, a guideline. See if that helps you get those 3 sentences out, and then you can modify them to make it work best for you. But I will tell you, you need those 3 sentences in any case. So whether or not you've got an opportunity to do a 20-second wow, somebody's going to ask you, what do you do? Somebody's going to ask you, I bet you, I hope somebody's asking you, what do you do? And so you've got to have that sentence. You've got to have that sentence. Does everybody have that sentence? So you've got to have that sentence, right? Okay, and then somebody's going to ask you, well, what's the big idea? What's so special about your company? And what they're asking you is, what is your compelling value proposition? So rarely will anybody come up to you and say, what is your compelling value proposition? But in essence, whenever they ask what's special about what you're doing, what they mean is, what is the compelling value proposition and who realizes that value? So you need that sentence. What is the sentence that articulates your compelling value proposition? And then you need the third sentence, because people are all the time, they're going to be thinking, if they don't say it, how are you different than all of the other apps that do something similar, right? So you've got to come up with the how we are different sentence anyway. So those 3 sentences are useful to have in your bag of tricks, but there might be another way to get to wow. There might be a different approach. So one way to repackage the whole thing is, instead of the 3 sentences, if you can tell a story or paint a picture in 1 sentence, that could be very effective. So instead of rattling off sort of a bunch of aspects of your company, if you could tell the story of your company starting with imagine if, right? Imagine if you had an app that pulled together all of your messages from all of your different messaging apps into one single unified messaging app. Wouldn't your life be easier? That's what we do, right? So by the way, I'm still hoping, I keep saying this, I keep offering this as a great product. Nobody's built it yet. Nobody's built it yet. In any case, but seriously, I really do want you to think, can you make it clear what you're doing and what the value is by saying, imagine if? That might be a useful framework for getting to wow. Another thing to do is to use an analogy or a simile or a metaphor or something so that you can compare what you're doing to something that everybody knows. So now this is a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, because you're in this industry, you're in this very specific industry wherever you are, and there may be a sort of big dog in your business that may be to you a big dog, but a lot of investors have never heard of this big dog. So, the other day, these guys that came in and they said, we're the atrium of blah, blah, blah. And who's atrium? I don't know. Does anybody know who atrium is, by the way? Do you know what atrium? Okay. So I don't know. I didn't know who atrium was, but we're the atrium of, I don't even know the business they were in. But so it was not helpful to say we're the atrium of something or other. Now, you can't all say we're the Google of, or we're the Airbnb of, or we're the Uber of, because frequently that will just destroy your credibility. But maybe, a team came in and they said, we're Netflix for books. Instead of paying per book, you pay a subscription. You can read as many books as you want. Okay, that's kind of obvious, right? I get it. I'm not, with all due respect, I didn't invest in the company, but I got the point, right? So if an analogy gets your point across more clearly, then use an analogy to help you get your point across. And then a totally different approach. If you've got some really big name you can drop to establish your credibility, to get people to say, wow, then, forget about all the other elements I told you. Just drop that really big name, right? So my favorite example of this, I happened to be in New Zealand, and I was a judge in a elevator pitch competition, right? So I'm listening to all these elevator pitches, and this woman gets up and says, hi, my name is Claudia, and we've developed special effects software for the entertainment industry. Last year, we won the Academy Award. And then she went on to talk a little bit more about what she was doing. And I said at the end, Claudia, you had me at Academy Award. Right? So if you've got anybody here have an Academy Award yet? Yeah? No? Okay. Well, so to top it all off, more recently, I got an entrepreneur came in. He's won 2 Academy Awards. I thought that was amazing. So a company called Soul Machines. Really, really cool technology. But a counterexample, a team came into our office, hour-long meeting, right? All these slides. 55 minutes into the meeting, put up the team slide, because the template said the team slide goes to the end, right? So put up the team slide, and on the team slide, it turns out one of the co-founders was a Nobel laureate. And I go, oh my God, are you telling me Bill Sharp is really one of the co-founders of this company? Nobel Prize in Economics? And they go, yeah. And I say, but why didn't you tell us this at the beginning? And he said, well, because we wanted to end with a bang. And I said, yeah, but if you had told us at the beginning, we would have listened, right? So, hello. So, if you've got something compelling, tell us early on. You have a proof of concept for $500,000 with General Motors. Okay, that's good if you're in autonomous vehicle software or something like that, right? So if you've got something really big that is referenceable, that I can call up and determine that it's true, it better not be a lie, then tell us early on, okay? If not in the first 20 seconds, in the first 30 seconds, okay? But it's both compelling and establishes your credibility. So that's how you get to wow. So now, some final tips. First, keep it simple. Here's a problem that everybody has. Everybody has the problem that, everybody has the problem that, you're trying to do your marketing communications and figure out the right words, so you write them down, right? You write them out, because it's much easier to think through good sentences when you write them down. But people don't talk the way they write. So it's okay to try to construct the basic ideas by writing them down, but then convert them into human speech. So everybody can tell when someone is reading something that was written as distinct from talking from, the heart, right? So figure out the point you want to make and then make it in human speech. So that means keep it simple. If you write it down, you will write compound sentences with subordinate clause and hyphenated inserts and appositives and all those gerundives and all those things, right? You don't want to have those in your simple wow. Because the key is somebody's got to memorize. Somebody's got to remember what you say. They've got to understand what you say, and they've got to remember what you say. If you make it complex language, they're not going to understand it. They're not going to remember it. This goes back to the test. When you develop your wow, try it on someone, and then ask that someone to tell it to the person next to them. And see if they can remember. See if they can tell it to them. Okay? So keep it simple. Be customer focused. So this is not inherent to wow, but the point is you're trying to convey your compelling value proposition. Your value proposition is always about your customer. It's not about your technology. It's not about, we use silicon nitride. Yeah. So that's not what makes your technology compelling. It's we cut customer costs by 50% in their data center power consumption. Whoa, that's amazing, right? So be customer focused when you're articulating your value proposition. Use 1 or 2 numbers. Don't use 0 numbers and don't use 5 numbers. One of the things that's happened recently, well, it's always been true, is that entrepreneur pitch deck slides are just covered in numbers. The big new trend is to make the numbers really big, right? So now they put 60-point font, and they say 17.63% CAGR, yay, whatever. So figure out the numbers that are important and make sure those get through. If you bury us in a whole string of numbers, we're not going to remember which numbers are important. So, and then lastly, of course, it goes without saying, don't lie. So now why would I say this? Because it's so obvious. You would never lie, would you? No, of course you would never lie. But I got to tell you, the problem being an entrepreneur, I get this totally. You're so enthusiastic, you're so excited, you're so confident. Maybe you have a tendency to exaggerate. Maybe. I don't know. Not you guys, but so we came up with what we call the top 10 entrepreneur lies. And this is as a way of saying to entrepreneurs, please, please be careful how you articulate your value proposition, because sometimes you hurt your credibility with statements that you think are totally reasonable, but sound wrong to investors. So what are the top 10 entrepreneur lies? Lie number 1, our projections are conservative, right? Every freaking entrepreneur on the planet thinks their projections are conservative. You are going to miss your numbers. I know you're going to miss your numbers. Every investor knows you're going to miss your numbers. You think it's going to be a piece of cake. It's not going to be a piece of cake. Your projections are not conservative. Lie number 2, Our target market is $56 billion. This is the point I was making before about lying about your market size. That shows you don't know how to do market segmentation. You don't know how to target specific personas in your customer base. Line number 3, we have a world-class team. Now, I get it. You are loyal to your college roommate and his cousin. That's great. I appreciate that. You know, that's fine, but you probably don't have a world-class team yet, and that's okay. That's okay. We just want to know that you are driven to build a world-class team and that you're capable of attracting a world-class team. Line number 4, our average sales cycle is 90 days, or, you know, if you're on the, internet, our conversion rate is 12%. No enterprise company has a sales cycle of 90 days. No internet company has a conversion rate of 12%. So nobody's going to believe those assumptions if they're embedded in your financial model. Line number 5, we have no direct competition. So, entrepreneurs have gotten a lot better. Nobody says we have no competition anymore because they heard that that's not something you should say, right? But now they say we have no direct competition, right? There's nobody else who has a purple widget that is quite as small as our purple widget or whatever it is, right? Okay. Line number 6. No one else can do what we can do. That's a variation on we have no competition. Line number 7, all we need is 2% of the market, right? $56 billion market, 2%, that's $1 billion company. How hard could it be to get 2%? Can't be that hard, right? So it turns out it's really hard. Line number 8, we'll be cash flow positive in 12 months. The only way this ever becomes true is if investors stop giving you money and your only choice is ramen noodles and cash flow positive, right? That's not necessarily a good outcome. Line number 9, our deal with Google, our deal with whatever, will be signed in 2 weeks. Never promise that a deal is going to get signed. You can talk about you're in negotiations, you can talk about whatever, but never promise a definitive date for a deal to be done because deals always slip. I know you've all had experience with deals that didn't slip, but deals always slip. And so 3 weeks later, I come back to you and I say, hey, so you signed that deal last week, right? And he said, well, the lawyer went on vacation and whatever, they got a new boss, and they promised me that they'd take care of it next month, and already you're a liar, right? Already you've lost your credibility with me. And then line number 10, I'll be happy to hand over the reins to a new CEO. We know you won't be happy, and believe it or not, we do not want to fire entrepreneurs. We want entrepreneurs to be successful. We want entrepreneurs to grow with the company and continue in their roles. Not every entrepreneur grows with the company. Not every entrepreneur wants to be the CEO forever. That's fine. That's fine. Let's just have an honest conversation up front about what your expectations are and what our expectations are and how we're going to deal with things if things change. So that is an important conversation to have with your investors. So those are the top 10 entrepreneur lies. And just to add to the whole thing, if you go to our website, I have a blog called The Top 10 Terrible, Horrible, Very Bad Slides. So what I did is I looked at all the templates that are out there, and I basically picked the template slides that I'm telling you guys, do not use this template slide, okay? Stop it, okay? And so that's how you get to WOW, and I want to thank Greg for helping me with the slides. And then here is my email, and here is our website. And so if you want the slides, just let me know. You could always go watch the video again, and just relive the experience, right? So when is the video going to be posted? Wow. How about that for speed? All right. But if you have a question to follow up, my email is reichert@garage.com. And we have a bunch of resources for entrepreneurs on our website and some blogs. So with that,
Bill's going to stick around here, answer questions.
All right.
And also, he's happy to
hug unicorns.
He's happy to pose for a selfie like this. So.
Yes. Oh, really? Okay. All right. As long as everybody promises not to post. Yeah? All right. Okay, great. All right. So, all right. So any questions, or we got about 5 minutes, right?
You want to take group questions, or you want them one-on-one?
Are there group questions?
All right, let's take a
there
few
are.
group questions.
Is that okay? to do
Just a
that?
few. Go
All
ahead.
right. Okay. Oh, okay.
Any advice on the email, like when I send a So any advice on like when I send an initial email? You talked about the pitch deck.
So the question I always get
Yeah.
from entrepreneurs is, I don't have, any friends in the venture capital community. I don't have any warm referrals from the entrepreneur community. How do I connect with an investor if all I have is their email address? So generally what, 99% of the time what people will say is, you've got to find someone who can vouch for you, who's got some connection to whomever you want to get to. And you can say, Bob recommended that I get, at a minimum, you should be able to say, Bob recommended that I reach out to you because you invested in X, which is which is in a similar industry as my company Y, right? So ideally, you want to figure out some connection there. It is almost impossible. I mean, it's at less than 0.1% chance. If you send a cold email, that you will get a good response. You might get a robotic response. You might get a response. It'll probably be a robot or it'll be an intern. But, okay? So you've got to figure out a way to establish your credibility as an entrepreneur with some connection, okay? And then you've got about 50 words for your wow. So the point is, at the top of any communication you send to an investor, you've got to have a written version of your wow. It's got to be clear what you're doing. We got to understand, why is it incredibly compelling, and why are you different than all the other companies that are trying to do that? And then maybe you'll get people to open your attached executive summary or whatever. But generally, you want to have some credibility establishment in terms of a relationship, and then a simple, clean email with the wow that says, we've got a seed, a Series Seed deck that we're using now. Can I send it to you and schedule a time to talk? That's about as good as it's going to get, and so you might get a 5% response with that. I mean, it's tough. It is really tough. So there was one other question.
Right there.
But he ran away.
Hey.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. My question is, how will you answer the question from investors? How will you protect yourself from being copied?
Yeah.
I always get that, and I think that everything can be copied
Yeah.
if it's not only the patent or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so what we look for is, so this is sort of the inverse of one of the things we want to see in every startup we're investing in, and that is, we want to see an unfair advantage. What unfair advantage do you have that will create some distance between you and the competition? So your unfair advantage could be a whole bunch of different things. It could be proprietary technology that's not easy to replicate, but that's a technology-based business. What was Uber's unfair advantage? What was Uber's unfair advantage? Pardon? What? Well, then no. I mean, that wasn't. I mean, what was their unfair advantage at the beginning? Yeah, but there were other ride-sharing apps. There were other ride-sharing apps out there. They were not the first ride-sharing app. Lyft actually started before Uber started. It wasn't called Lyft at the time. It was called Zimride. But there were a bunch of other ride-sharing apps out there. Uber's, and so, it's hard. The short answer is, anybody could have copied Uber. And people did, and they tried. People did and they tried. The more nuanced answer to the question is, the reason Uber won initially is that Uber was willing to break the law. As a business strategy, Uber was willing to break the law. And it was very hard for all the other entrepreneurs to conceive of a business model that was illegal and proceed with it. But Uber basically said, we may be breaking the law, but we're providing so much value and nobody's really going to enforce the law. Well, it turned out that wasn't always true, but it was frequently true. But having the chutzpah to have a business model that was willing to break the law turned out to be an unfair advantage that they had. Now, I'm not recommending this to anybody. Okay? What I am recommending is figure out what your unfair advantage is, and that's your answer to how do you avoid having somebody simply copy you? Okay? And so it would be a longer discussion because I'd have to know what you're doing to brainstorm where you might find an unfair advantage. But it is an issue. If you've got nothing, I'm a little anxious, about another wellness app. I don't mean to pick on Anita, okay? How hard is it to put up another wellness app, right? So, she needs to have an angle and an approach that is driven by her team that nobody else is using, and then collect data that she can then use to refine her process to make it more and more effective to get, outcome data that beats everyone else. So to have outcome data that's better than everyone else is not simply copyable. So if you can create, an approach that does deliver better outcomes, just because you have another app that looks like your app doesn't mean you're going to have the same outcome. But, okay. Now with that,
Any more questions for Bill?
did we have...
Oh, yeah, quite. Okay.
Wait a second. He already asked a question. Okay. You could go. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Google is it was not the first search engine, right? They were, I think,
Yes.
13th or 18th or something.
Right.
So if Google comes and pitches okay, we have a search engine, there are 12 other competitors.
Right.
So what benefit they can say that, okay, this is different than the 12 others?
Yeah. So right? That Google basically borrowed this approach from academia, which they call page ranking, which is just citation ranking, right? So they said, it's not the value of a paper in the academic world is not how many people read the paper. The value of the paper is how many people cite the paper. And they said, let's apply that to the web. So the importance of a web page is not how many people read the web page. The importance of a web page is how many people cite or link to the web page. Let's use that as a way to build a directory of web pages, and we'll call it page ranking and all that stuff. So they had this angle. Which differentiated them, which was just a little foot in the door that they could talk to people and say, we're different than all the other search engines. We're not just monitoring visits, we're monitoring links. And nobody else is doing that. And people thought, oh, that's clever. Let's see how that goes. Right? And then because they got Sequoia and Kleiner, they were able to convince Yahoo, which, said, well, how important is search? Search, not that important. Okay, Google, we'll use you for our search engine. And then kaboom, right? And then they stole pay-per-click. Is anybody here from Google? So, okay. But right? So Google, how does Google make money? Ads. Where did they get the technology for their ad engine? They stole it from another company, which eventually became Overture, which eventually was bought by Yahoo, which eventually sued them, which eventually got $100 million from Google, plus some stock, because Google stole their IP. But for Google, by the time the courts settled, $100 million was chump change. So, again, I'm not encouraging you to steal. But I got to tell you, sort of the lessons from Silicon Valley are kind of conflicting, right? in terms of what it takes to win. So, yes, Ross.
Someone who gave the impression they would not push the limits in that way. Is that a turnoff to you? Is that a knock
That's
against
a
them?
very, I tell, so I never tell the story in Silicon Valley because it's not true in Silicon Valley, but in most other places on the planet where I go, like Canada, for example, one of my cracks when I'm in Canada is, Canada, you guys, it's just like Silicon Valley, except you guys are nice. And then I point out that nice is not a feature, right? That, there are too many places on earth where the culture is you have to be nice. And that holds back entrepreneurs. So we're not looking for nice entrepreneurs. We're not looking for nice entrepreneurs, believe it or not. We're looking for entrepreneurs who have an incredible sense of urgency. We're looking for entrepreneurs who are amazingly savvy about figuring out some way to get things done. So we're, and I sometimes make the point, we're not looking for smart entrepreneurs because smart entrepreneurs almost always have this sort of framework of academic smarts, that the point of being smart is to always have the right answer. And this is the reason why most successful entrepreneurs were not good at school. Most successful entrepreneurs, not entirely true, but most successful entrepreneurs, it's not that they're smart, it's that they're savvy. And so savvy students figure out how to get by without doing too much work. Savvy entrepreneurs figure out how to get things done without making it hard. And that's what you want, because there's so much you got to get done. You want savvy. You don't want smart. You want urgent. You don't want nice. So we want to see entrepreneurs not entrepreneurs that are going to break the law, but entrepreneurs who are going to push every angle to see what works, and hopefully what works is legal. Hopefully, right? So no, that's a great question. I don't know. So, any other questions?
Well, I think we should
So-
end on that note.
Yeah, I know we gotta get out of here, right? It's kind
Well,
of
you
late.
can stick around.
Okay.
So, let's hear it for Bill once again.
Okay.